Hero Dogs by Eric Z. That's me. This is for all of you weekend warriors and lazy dogs. And no, I'm not just talking about warrior dogs who fight electric Yoda dolls or jump roping dogs. And nor am I talking, and witness the proper use of nor here, nor am I talking about dogs that fight about tennis balls, nor the dogs that think they can fly because they spin their tails. No. We're talking about real hero dogs, the dogs that risked their lives in World War II and Iraq, jumping out of planes, stuff like that. We're talking about Conan, the military working dogs. And by the way, this is a true story. All of the stories in this book are true and perfect for bedtime. So, listen up, cats. This is the good stuff. Let's begin. Dedicated to the kids. If you persist, you will succeed. Take a journey back in time as we meet the hero war dogs who helped shape history itself. From the most recent Conan, all the way back to the Civil War with Sally Ann Jarrett. From Navy SEALs to Marine Raiders, dogs play an extraordinary role in combat. But before they became so popular, some other dogs had to lead the way. Read on to meet some of the canine heroes who paved the way for the modern military working dog. Meet Conan. Conan is the most recent hero dog and is still alive today. Conan is a special operations military working dog in the United States' 1st SFOD-E. Yes, they are called the Delta Forces. Not long ago, in the year 2019, Conan went on a secret mission with the U.S. Army's Delta Forces. They went to a desert region in Syria to catch the #1 terrorist in the world. His name was al-Baghdadi. In the wee hours of the morning, when everybody was asleep, the Delta Forces landed with their helicopters and approached al-Baghdadi's hiding place, a fortified compound near the Turkish border. They had a firefight with al-Baghdadi's terrorist forces inside. The men of SFOD Delta won the fight, but al-Baghdadi fled into the compound down a secret tunnel. They were forced with the decision. Either they go down there and risk their lives and possibly get blown up, or they let Conan use his super nose to find out where Baghdadi is and drag him out of the compound. Problem: they knew that al-Baghdadi had explosives and was probably wearing an explosive vest. The decision came to send in Conan, and that they did. Conan bolted down the tunnel after al-Baghdadi in pitch blackness. He used his awesome dog nose to find al-Baghdadi on the way down the tunnel. Conan actually got hurt. There were electric wires everywhere in the tunnel, and he got shocked. He knew where al-Baghdadi was hiding, but before he could grab him, kaboom! Al-Baghdadi set off the explosive vest. Now this whole time, the Delta Forces and Conan's handler were watching through the camera on Conan's back, and they could actually talk to him. So his handler said, "Come on home now." And Conan did. Isn't that cool? Conan came out of the tunnel alive, but a little injured. The whole mission to get al-Baghdadi lasted barely 2 hours. It was very successful. He not only got the #1 terrorist in the world, but he also risked his own life so that the men didn't have to. When it was all over, President Trump was so happy with the mission that he brought Conan to the White House and gave him a special medal just for dogs, and he even tweeted about it. Meet Lex. Not long ago in the war in Iraq, there was a dog called Lex. Lex was the epitome of loyalty. Epitome, noun, epitome, plural noun, epitomes. A person or thing that is a perfect example of a particular quality or type. On March 21st, 2007, while at an FOB, Forward Operating Base, in Iraq, Lex and his handler, Corporal Dustin Lee, were hit by a 73mm SPG-9 rocket. Lee was mortally wounded, and Lex got hit in the legs and body with shrapnel. Despite his wounds, Lex refused to leave his handler, Dustin Lee. Lex had to be dragged away so the soldiers and medics could take care of Lee. He kept working, even with the shrapnel still in his back. The veterinarians didn't want to remove it, though, because it was so close to the spine it might have damaged it. Lex was one of the first dogs to ever be released early from military service. They did this so that he could join Dustin Lee's family. It was an early retirement for a military working dog. But Lex never stopped. He just kept working. He went to the Veterans Administration and VA hospitals and helped veterans recover from their battle wounds. Lex's behavior was so awesome that the Military Order of the Purple Heart presented Lex with a commemorative Purple Heart. Not long after that, on September 4th, 2008, the American Kennel Club announced that Lex won the 7th Law Enforcement AKC Award for Canine Excellence. Lex receives the honorary Purple Heart Medal. The Purple Heart is only awarded to those who are injured in battle. Meet Sinbad. Sinbad was the hero dog and mascot of the United States Coast Guard cutter Campbell. Sinbad, along with Seargent STUBBY, was the only dog that actually held a rank in the United States military. Afterwards, the military made it against the rules to give a dog an actual rank and pay grade. So the crew had to make up some funny stories to justify enlisting Sinbad into the Coast Guard. They said that Sinbad was just like a sailor because he drank coffee, whiskey, and beer. On top of that, he performed his duty at his station on the ship. He was an able-bodied K-9 seaman. The Coast Guard agreed and enlisted him into the service with his paw print on the enlistment papers. Sinbad was given the title of Chief Dog, abbreviated K9C, and the rank of Chief Petty Officer. Sinbad spent 11 years at sea on the Campbell, including combat in World War II. Sinbad and his crew in 1943. Sinbad was aboard Campbell during World War II while the ship was patrolling the Atlantic Ocean. With their sonar, they discovered the German submarine U-606 and attacked. They dropped depth charges to try to sink the submarine, but they only damaged it. A depth charge is an anti-submarine warfare weapon. It is intended to destroy a submarine by being dropped into the water nearby and detonating, subjecting the target to a powerful and destructive hydraulic shock. The submarine surfaced, but the Campbell's guns were not powerful enough to sink the U-boat. There was only one option left. They'll have to ram it. The U.S. Coast Guard Campbell proceeded full steam ahead with Sinbad on board and rammed the U-606 and fully destroyed it. However, ramming another ship is very dangerous and almost always damages your ship too. The USCGC Campbell suffered severe damage and was disabled. Most of the crew left the ship while a skeleton crew remained on board with Sinbad as another American warship towed the Campbell to Canada for repair. A skeleton crew is the minimum number of personnel needed to operate and maintain a ship at its most simple operating requirements. Skeleton crews are often used during an emergency and are meant to keep a ship's vital functions operating. The crew were really happy to have Sinbad on board. He was good luck, and everyone believed nothing could happen to the ship as long as Sinbad was with them. Sinbad was aboard during other anti-submarine battles and strafing attacks by enemy aircraft too, and they survived them all. Sinbad was awarded a bunch of service ribbons: the American Defense Service Medal, American Campaign Medal, European African Middle Eastern Campaign Medal, the Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal, the World War II Victory Medal, and the Navy Occupation Service Medal. They were all attached to Sinbad's collar. After spending 11 years with the United States Coast Guard in Campbell's crew, Sinbad was taken ashore at the Barnegat Light Station in New Jersey and honorably discharged from the Coast Guard and put on inactive duty. Meet Cappy. Cappy was a Doberman pinscher of the United States Marine Corps, but nowadays we just call them Dobermans. During World War II, the United States had to take back the island of Guam, which was taken over by the Japanese Imperial Army. This was no ordinary army. The Japanese Imperial Army was known for its extreme hardness in battle. They would strike with precision and deadly timing. And they were fanatical. They were so determined to win, some of their officers were known to attack the American Sherman tanks with nothing but a samurai sword. Yes, a man with a sword against a tank. Because they knew this was going to be a really tough job, the United States Marines had to think of a super weapon that they could use against these super tough Japanese samurais. They decided to use dogs, but not just any dogs. They chose Doberman pinschers. This proved to be a very good choice. Here they come. This is an actual picture of the Marines assaulting the beach on Guam with their Dobermans. It was a massive, hardcore battle. Over 1,000 American soldiers and 5,000 Japanese soldiers died. The battle for Guam was one of the hardest battles ever of any war. The Dobermans were used on patrols to sniff out enemy soldiers and bombs with their superior dog noses. They were also used to guard the Marines so that they could get a good night's rest and not have to worry about the enemy sneaking up on them. Dobermans proved to be very good dogs at guard duty. The Doberman pinscher was actually bred to be a guard dog from the very beginning. Question: who made the first Doberman? Answer: it was Carl Friedrich Louis Dobermann from Thuringia, Germany. You see, Carl Dobermann was not only a tax collector, but he was also a night watchman and the overseer of the town's dog pound. Collecting tax money throughout the countryside was a risky job, and he was constantly being attacked by bandits and thugs. However, he saw a great opportunity in the town's dog pound. He took the best dogs of his choice and bred them together to make exactly what he wanted in a guard dog. The result was the modern Doberman pinscher, one of the very first Doberman pinschers in 1905. Indeed, Dobermans were so effective that the Germans called them devil dogs. Teufelhunden is German for devil dogs. Carl Dobermann's creation really proved their value in combat on Guam. There was one Doberman that the Marines especially loved. His name was Cappy. One night, Cappy was guarding over 250 sleeping Marines. Suddenly, his amazing dog ears and nose detected some enemy soldiers sneaking up on the camp. It turned out to be a huge force of Japanese troops. They were advancing on the Marines' camp when Cappy alerted them and woke up all his teammates. Because of Cappy's efforts, more than 250 Marines survived. It was a long day, though, and the attack became a full battle. As the Japanese Imperial Army continued their onslaught, Cappy and his handler, PFC Alan Jacobson, were injured. PFC, Private First Class, a rank in the United States Army and Marines. Jacobson refused to leave Cappy's side until he had been evacuated to the rear, a military field hospital where he and Cappy could be treated for their wounds. Sadly, Cappy didn't make it. His battle wounds were too many, and he died of his injuries in the field hospital. This made him the first devil dog to be killed in battle during the fighting on Guam. And he wasn't the last. 60 military working dogs were deployed to Guam, and 25 of them died in action, and 21 or more were injured. The Marines loved the dogs and Cappy so much that they made a monument to him and the other hero dogs. You can see it on the island of Guam even to this day, the National War Dog Cemetery on Guam. Meet Chips. Chips was a sentry dog for the United States Army and the most decorated war dog from World War II. He got a lot of medals. Sentry, to guard or watch, especially a soldier standing guard at a point of passage, such as a gate. He was a German Shepherd Collie Siberian Husky mix, owned by Edward J. Wren of Pleasantville, New York. You see, during the Second World War, the United States Army didn't have enough dogs, so normal citizens would donate their dogs to the U.S. Army. And Chips was one of them. He joined the U.S. Army in 1942 and promptly went to the War Dog Training Center in Virginia for his training as a sentry dog. Once he graduated, he went straight to the battlefield. The first engagement was in Sicily, Italy. He was in the 3rd Infantry Division when he and his handler got pinned down on the beach by an enemy machine gun team that was firing from a pillbox. Pillbox, noun pillbox, plural noun pillboxes, a small, partly underground concrete fort used as an outpost. Chips broke away from his team, jumped into the pillbox, and attacked the gunners. The 4 enemy machine gunners were forced to leave the pillbox and surrender to the U.S. troops. When he jumped into the pillbox, Chips was so close to the machine gun that he got burned on the head. But the day wasn't over yet. After single-handedly, or is that podly, capturing the pillbox, he went on that day to capture 10 more enemy soldiers. Chips was indeed a very brave and capable dog. For all of this bravery, he was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, the Silver Star, and the Purple Heart. However, that was back in World War II. Nowadays, dogs are not allowed to receive the same medals as humans. That's also why his unit unofficially awarded him a theater ribbon with an arrowhead for an assault landing and battle stars for each of his 8 campaigns. The American Campaign Medal and Ribbon of 1942, also known as a theater ribbon. Chip's story has a happy ending. In 1945, when the war was over, he went back to his owner, Mr. Wren, and his family. Meet Smokey. Smokey was a Yorkshire Terrier who was so small she could fit into a soldier's helmet. She weighed only 4 pounds and was 7 inches tall. The Yorkshire Terrier. Smokey was found in World War II in the deep, dark jungles of New Guinea by Corporal William A. Wynne, an American soldier. Nobody knows how she got there, but she was definitely abandoned when he found her. Thus began her illustrious military career. For the next 2 years, Smokey backpacked through the rest of World War II and accompanied Corporal Wynne on combat flights in the Pacific with the 5th Air Force, 26th Photo Reconnaissance Squadron. Smokey spent long hours dangling off a machine gun in Corporal Wynne's backpack and flew 12 air and sea rescue and reconnaissance missions. Not only that, but she survived 150 air raids on New Guinea and made it through a typhoon at Okinawa. Like many other hero dogs, Smokey used her superior dog hearing to warn the soldiers of incoming shells and bombs. One time, Smokey and Corporal Wynne were on a ship. As the ship deck was booming and vibrating from anti-aircraft guns, Smokey guided Wynne out of the enemy fire that hit 8 other men standing right next to them. When Smokey and Corporal Wynne were not on duty, he taught her numerous tricks, which she performed for the entertainment of the troops. Smokey even parachuted from 30 feet in the air out of a tree using a parachute made just for her. Smokey didn't just do tricks, though. She became a real hero by helping the engineers build an air base at Lingayen Gulf in Luzon, a crucial airfield for American warplanes. You see, General MacArhtur needed to retake the island of Luzon, the biggest island of the Philippines. It wasn't going to be easy, though. It was guarded by the Japanese army. Before U.S. forces could launch the attack on Luzon, they needed to make a new airbase close to the island. This way, they could provide air support for their advancing troops. Early in the Luzon campaign, the Signal Corps needed to run a telegraph wire through a 70-foot-long pipe that was 8 inches wide. It was filled with dirt in many parts of it, making it only 4 inches wide on the inside. It was Smokey's job to pull the communications wires through this pipe. Corporal Wynne tied the communications wire to Smokey's collar. Then they put Smokey in the pipe and tried to get her to run to the other end. Once in the pipe, she took a few steps in and then ran back. So they tried again. This time she went in much farther, so far that nobody could see her. Then, when she was in the middle of the pipe, they lost all contact with her. Corporal Wynne and the other soldiers called for her. "Come on, Smokey, come on, you can do it." At last, about 20 feet away from the end of the pipe, her 2 little amber eyes could be seen glowing in the dark. Then she started running towards the end of the pipe and into the arms of the men with the communications wire. Mission accomplished. What would have been a dangerous 3-day digging task to place the wire was instead completed in minutes. Smokey's work saved over 250 soldiers and crewmen from having to move over 40 United States fighter planes while they dug up the taxiway for the communications wire, placing the men and the planes in danger from enemy bombings and sniper fire. After the war, Smokey and Wynne traveled to Hollywood and all over the world to perform. Smokey had incredible skills. She could even walk on a tightrope while blindfolded. Smokey knew so many tricks that she performed in 42 live television shows without ever repeating a trick. Meet Rip. Rip was a search and rescue dog in London during World War II. Search and rescue dogs use their powerful noses to find people under buildings and rubble, or who are just lost in the forest and mountains. One day during World War II, the little town of Poplar, London was bombed in an air raid. The local air raid warden, Mr. King, was sent to search through the rubble of the destroyed buildings and find any survivors. While he was searching through the debris, he found Rip, a small terrier dog. He tried to find Rip's owner, but he couldn't. So he got to keep Rip. Mr. King promptly started to train Rip for the role of search and rescue dog. The amazing thing about Rip was that he didn't need much training at all. He learned it so fast and instinctively, he just knew how to do it. Here's an actual picture from World War II of Rip searching through the rubble with his handler, Mr. King. Gunner. Gunner was an Australian Kelpie of the Royal Australian Air Force, RAAF, during World War II. He was found by aircraft man Percy Westcott, who heard Gunner whimpering. His front leg was broken. Percy took Gunner to a military hospital, but the doctor said, "We can't treat anybody who's not a soldier." So Percy made up a name and number right on the spot, and he said, "This soldier's name is Gunner. His number is 0000." The doctor said, "Well, good then. Bring him over here and I'll fix him right up." And so Gunner was officially admitted to the Royal Australian Air Force. The young Gunner dog was badly shaken up by his broken leg and the war. But Percy and the 2nd Squadron of the Royal Australian Air Force were so nice to him that he recovered quickly and even began to like them. Gunner's hearing was so good that he was able to warn of the coming enemy aircraft up to 20 minutes before they arrived, and even before they were detected by their radar. Radar, noun, radar, a system for detecting the presence, direction, distance, and speed of aircraft, ships, and other objects by sending out pulses of high-frequency electromagnetic waves that are reflected off of the object back to the source. It happened like this. As the Australian soldiers went about their daily routine at the airfield, Gunner became agitated and started to whine and jump around. Then just a few minutes later, a formation of enemy fighter planes appeared above Darwin and began bombing and strafing the town. 2 days later, Gunner did it again, and not long afterwards came another air attack. Gunner repeated this over and over again in the weeks that followed. Long before the sirens sounded, Gunner would become agitated and head for shelter, warning everyone of the coming fighter planes and enemy bombers. In this way, Gunner saved the lives of many soldiers and airmen by giving them an early warning. But Gunner didn't behave the same way when he heard Allied planes approaching. He could tell the difference between the sounds of the engines used by Allied planes and those of the enemy aircraft. For example, the Mitsubishi ZERO. Gunner was so reliable that the commanding officer of the Air Force Base had his handler Percy sound the air raid siren whenever Gunner alerted him. Allies, the British, French, Australian, and American military forces of World War II. Dogs have far more sensitive hearing than humans and can detect much quieter sounds. Their sense of hearing is about 4 times more sensitive than humans. An Australian Kelpie. Look at those radar ears. Gunner was such a cool dog, and the airmen of the Royal Australian Air Force liked him so much that they even took him up in their fighter planes with them. And afterwards, he would even go to the showers with them and watch movies with them at the theater on the airbase. Gunner was just like a human. Meet Rags. Rags was another hero dog who was a mixed breed terrier. He could also do a military salute with his paws. He performed much of the same duties as the other dogs, like an early warning system for incoming shells and mustard gas. Indeed, the trench warfare of World War I was terrible, but the most important task Rags did was delivering messages. One day, Private James Donovan was marching in the Bastille Day parade in France. But he was late in reporting back to his unit. That's bad news, because in the military, if you go AWOL, that is, absent without leave, that's a serious offense, and it is considered to be treason. So he had to think of something fast. Just in that moment, he found Rags, abandoned on the streets of Paris. Donovan named him Rags because when he first found him, he mistook him for a pile of rags. And he found Rags just in time because right then and there the military police caught Donovan. Donovan made up a story that Rags was the missing mascot of the 1st Infantry Division and that he was part of a search party. Luckily for Donovan, the story worked, and he was allowed to return to his unit with Rags. Shortly thereafter, Donovan was sent to the front lines. Rags went with him, of course. Donovan was an AEF Signal Corps specialist serving with the U.S. 1st Infantry Division. His job was to string communications wire between advancing infantry and supporting field artillery. He also had to repair field telephone wires that had been damaged by bombs and other shell fire. This means that when the wires were broken, the only way to relay messages was with runners and good old-fashioned handwritten letters. The runners had to run from post to post, braving the enemy fire, barbed wire and mustard gas. They were frequently killed or wounded. In July 1918, Rags and Donovan and an infantry unit of 42 men were cut off and surrounded by the enemy. Rags carried back a message which ordered an artillery barrage and reinforcements. They came just in time and rescued his team. Rags loved his new job and learned to run messages between the rear headquarters and the front lines, and provided early warning of incoming shells. When he was in the front lines and came under fire, he simply imitated the men around him, who would drop to the ground and cover their heads. It didn't take long until the soldiers saw Rags hugging the ground, with his paws spread out before anyone heard the sound of an incoming round. Rags' super-sensitive dog ears and hearing was telling him when the shells were coming, well before his teammates could hear them. The American soldiers of Donovan's group learned to keep their eyes on Rags, and he became an early warning system for artillery shell fire. After his first tour of the front, he went on even more and kept winning. He was sent with his owner, Private Donovan, to the Meuse-Argonne. This campaign was especially hard, and the Americans and the enemy were deeply entrenched. It was mortal combat. Rags delivered messages despite being bombed, gassed, and partially blinded. Finally, in September 1918, Rags and Donovan were involved in the last American campaign of World War I. The American forces were at a great impasse. They couldn't move any further unless they secured the Very-Eponville road. However, they didn't have enough firepower to do it. If only they could get back up from an artillery brigade, it just might work. Donovan and his commanding officer decided to take a chance. They wrote a message for the 7th Field Artillery nearby and tied it to Rags' collar. Rags took off in a fury. He carried the message from the 1st Battalion of the 26th Infantry Regiment to the 7th Field Artillery. They knew just what to do. They started a massive artillery barrage against the enemy forces and secured the road. This saved the lives of a large number of American soldiers. Then on October 9, 1918, Rags and Donovan both got hit by shell fire and gas shells. Donovan was seriously wounded and was sent to the military hospital at Fort Sheridan in Chicago. Rags had his right front paw, right ear, and right eye damaged by shrapnel and was also mildly gassed. Shrapnel, noun shrapnel, fragments of a bomb, shell, or other object thrown out by an explosion. Rags spent his entire life in the U.S. Army and was the mascot of the 1st Infantry Division. He would appear at the flagpole at various military bases for the retreat ceremony. As the flag was lowered and the bugle played, Rags can be seen saluting with the assembled troops. As a matter of fact, Rags saluted every time he... Meet Seargent Stubby. Seargent Stubby was a Boston Terrier Bull Terrier mix who served for 18 months in the U.S. Army and was in 17 battles on the Western Front in World War I. His awesome dog nose and sense of smell saved his regiment from surprise mustard gas attacks. He also caught a German soldier by the seat of his pants, holding him there until the American soldiers found him. Stubby is the most decorated dog of World War I and the only dog to ever be promoted to sergeant through combat actions. Sergeant Stubby was even wounded twice in battle and received the wound stripe for this. You can see it on his vest in this picture. Look at all those medals. A modern Boston Terrier weighs up to 25 pounds. Stubby was found wandering the grounds of the Yale University campus in Connecticut, while soldiers of the Army's 102nd Infantry were training nearby. The soldiers quickly took a liking to him, and Corporal James Robert Conroy even trained him to do a military salute. When his division was called to go to war, Conroy took Stubby with him aboard the ship. However, he was discovered by Conroy's commanding officer. Just in this moment, Stubby saluted him with the military salute that Conroy trained him to do. The commanding officer was so impressed that he let Stubby stay on board and go to war with them. Stubby was part of the most hardcore, vicious battles ever conceived, the trench warfare of World War I. Stubby started combat on February 5, 1918 at Chemin, France. He was under constant fire day and night for over a month. In April 1918, during a raid to take Gettsyburg, Stubby was wounded in the front legs by retreating enemy soldiers throwing hand grenades. He was taken out of frontline combat to heal. But once he healed, he went right back to the trenches to help his fellow soldiers. Being a dog, he also had much better ears than his human soldier teammates. He could hear the whine of incoming artillery shells and bombs seconds before his teammates, so he would bark and alert his unit to duck for cover, saving even more lives. Stubby even captured a German spy. This convinced their unit commander to promote him to sergeant. Here's a picture of General John Blackjack Pershing awards Sergeant Stubby with a medal at a White House ceremony after the war in 1921. After the war, Stubby was quite famous. He led a lot of parades and also met 3 presidents: Woodrow Wilson, Calvin Coolidge, and Warren G. Harding. Sally Ann Jarrett. A long time ago, near the beginning of the United States of America itself, there was a dog called Sally Ann Jarrett. She was the mascot of the 11th Pennsylvania Infantry during the Civil War. The American Civil War was a civil war in the United States from 1861 to 1865, fought between northern states loyal to the Union and southern states that had seceded to form the Confederate States of America. Sally, as the soldiers would call her, was born in the spring of 1861 and was described by Colonel Richard Coulter as a brindle bull terrier of a fine breed. Her actual breed was most likely closest to the American Pit Bull Terrier of today. A modern American Pit Bull Terrier. The American Bull Terrier of the 1860s became the Pit Bull Terrier around 1896. The dog breeder John Pritchard Colby bred the very first dogs that would be officially registered as American Pit Bull Terriers. As a matter of fact, the American Pit Bull Terrier was so American that it was chosen as the official dog of the United States during World War I. World War I poster with an American Pit Bull Terrier. You might recognize this from the cover of this book. Fighting side by side with the soldiers, Sally learned to endure the hardships of war. She never shirked her duties nor shrank from battle. She always ran to the danger with her regiment and into the fighting, taking a position at the front lines and barking furiously at the enemy. She fought in every battle that her regiment was in, including the Battle of Cedar Mountain, the Battle of the Second Bull Run, Antietam, Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, Gettysburg, the Wilderness, Petersburg. On July 1st, 1863, the first day of fighting at the infamous Battle of Gettysburg, Sally got separated from her teammates. The soldiers feared she had been killed. But it was not so. Days later, they found her still guarding her fellow soldiers who had fallen in battle or were wounded on Oak Ridge on the very first day of the campaign. Sally quickly returned to her regiment and kept fighting. During the Battle of Spotsylvania Courthouse, Sally was hit in the neck and treated by the army doctor. The bullet could not be removed, but Sally survived, and the bullet eventually worked its way out of her neck and fell out. The 11th Pennsylvania Infantry Regiment fought in all of the toughest battles of the Civil War, and 2 of the regiment's men were awarded the Medal of Honor, both for capturing battle flags. Private George W. Reed earned his at the Battle of Globe Tavern on August 21st, 1864. Sergeant Hiram H. D. Levy at the Battle of Five Forks on April 1st, 1865. On February 6, 1865, 2 months before the end of the war, the Civil War ended May 9th, 1865, during the Union advance at Hatcher's Run, Virginia, she was struck by a bullet and killed. Despite being under heavy fire from the Confederate soldiers, several of her companions put aside their rifles to bury her on the spot. The men of the 11th Regiment loved Sally so much that they honored her when they erected their monument on the Gettysburg battlefield in 1890 with a life-sized bronze statue of Sally on the granite pedestal at the front of the monument. Her statue lies below the towering bronze figure of a skirmisher, recalling the Union soldiers who fought beside her and whom she guarded on Gettysburg's field. The end. Let's hear it for the dogs, shall we? Give them a hand. And your adventure continues here. These books go in depth and are much more detailed and have even more pictures. And I know you will love them. You can just search them on Amazon or type those links here in any internet browser. So, my friends, if you liked that presentation, do me a solid, hit that subscribe button. It's important.